Hello, everybody. This is Scott Killaby, and I'm here with one of my certified facilitators, Alina Panteleev. And I actually joked around because I have difficulty pronouncing her last name, but I think I have it right. And can you tell me the origin, first of all, of your name and where you were born, just so people know that?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in USSR when it was still quite strong in 1980s. So my full name would be Alina Pantileva Valentinovna, which is like a long name. Then it got shorter and shorter through my immigrations, which you will probably hear a little bit about. Yeah, but this for now I'm using the abbreviated version of it, dropping the A at the end because that's how in Russia I was given the A is given to female version of the family name. So for now I'm under my male version of family name, so Alina Pantilev. Nice to meet
Nice.
you.
And
Thanks for having me here, Scott.
where do you live now, Alina? What country
Yeah,
are you in?
so I'm living right now in Mexico, in Chiapas in the mountains of Mexico. And yeah, it's been a long journey. So traveling between different countries. My mom went through two immigrations, and I grew up in Israel since 10 years old, and then moved to Canada. Grew up, well, most of my life lived in Canada and Montreal. And for the past year or so, I live in Mexico.
Wow, you've been all over the place then.
Yeah, well, these are the places I lived longer. I've been all over all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a nomad spirit there.
Well, I'm trying to give a sense to the public about our facilitators because I know that they bring a rich experience and skill, and people don't know about you all. And this is why I'm interviewing people, is to let people know about you. We didn't certify you for no reason. We know that you're a powerhouse and you can help people, and I want people to know about you. So I want to, we talk a lot about an awakening. Oh, what about the story? Who cares? But it does matter because it helps us understand how we get to these spiritual practices and what happened to us and what drove us here and what we've learned and what insights. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. Can you say more about your childhood, your family, and any insights in terms of how that informed your later spiritual search and everything?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I love telling stories, so I'll try to be short here. So yeah, growing up in Russia altogether, just from birth, and reflecting back when I worked with birth as well, and reflecting back how babies were born in 1980s in USSR, they were actually separated from parents, separated from the mother for 3 days and kept in a not an ICU, but like a special place for newborns. So I think that was my initial trauma, probably being my mom was saying like, I don't even know how you look. Did you have 5 fingers? If everything is okay. So she was just really running after nurses trying to see how the baby was. So I can imagine that the implication of that practice back in USSR is that coldness, that harshness that they wanted to build into the society, I guess started there with birth. And so I cannot say that I kind of accessed and I needed to work on that with KI because it seemed that it fulfilled itself, that kind of initial separation and looking to reunite with the mother energy fulfilled itself in spiritual search, which I'm going to get later on. But I have a brother who was growing up with a brother, and my mom and my father being a musician, but being kind of absent from our life. So my mom took everything, the harshness on her. And growing up, of course, in KI, I came back to a lot of these places of fear of my mom because she's had a hard time, and I totally understand from the perspective of how struggling she was and how difficult it was for her and not working on their issues. You know, the rage and the explosion of anger and violence was quite abusive. Yeah, so so growing up with that for the first 10 years of my life in USSR, where mostly my interaction with my mom was a lot through anger and rage, and my brother as well. And he probably took most beatings than I am because he was just older. So yeah, so that influenced the search, that disconnection from the person, that represented the whole world to me, definitely propelled my search eventually, um, towards seeking, my seeking was reuniting with the mother, the kind of the mother energy of the cosmos, so to say. So that's how it came to me. But not right away, not right away. There was definitely a lot going on from that separation and lack of anyone. None of the parents were there since my mom was always busy. My dad was absent, moving to Israel. It was just my mom getting even busier with new language, more jobs to take care of. So we were kind of on our own, and my brother and me were very, very different. So he has more of a darker side and more like expressive, like toxic language, and just like criticizing everything and everyone. And me, I was more like on the lighter side and always had that, um, um, yeah, I guess more optimistic and super over positive. That was my coping mechanism, like over positive, making everything like, into a positive perspective and just sugarcoating everything and just surviving that way. um yeah, I guess that would be the answer for your question, so I don't want to go ahead. Or do you want me to lead that into my spiritual search, or how it got me?
Yeah, because I think you've set us up already, in terms of how you developed the person Lena in the family, and then with the sugar coating and the
Yeah.
dynamics of the family. So yeah, of course, we now know that that leads us into some spiritual. So can you connect us to that?
Yeah. So before going into the spiritual part of this, so I guess what's important to mention, like spirituality, like that inclination to mysticism was always here. Like even I remember was around maybe 6, 7 years old. We were playing with my brother these games of, maybe even older, maybe 9, where we would just ask each other like these intense questions, that almost impossible questions. And there's this one question that came up, like, how would it feel like if I was not born? Like, how would it feel? And I was just really trying to feel into it. And I would just get into these places of like, I have no idea of non-existence. And I couldn't tap into it. And it would just like, just stay with me for a while. So I would kind of dwell in those states a little bit when I was playing those games with my brother. And then it kind of came back again before the darkness came. I will come to that part at 16 years old. So at 14, I was also, oh yeah, again, a very, very, very important piece. And that's, it's important. It's interesting to see how with KI we find, or unlock with just awakening to our true nature, we find these pockets that were repressed and right now kind of missed it out, because, and that's a very important part. Growing up in USSR, so I was sent into a sleepaway camp where when I was 6 years old, I had this very traumatic experience that had happened to me. And I didn't know about it. Now, right now I can talk about it because I've seen all the pictures and everything that came up with that. But it was repressed, basically repressed shame around that originated when I was 6 years old. And that what kind of the event where I lost my voice and I lost the expression with that intense shame that was covering it. And I didn't know it was there. So, but looking back right now, in that felt sense of disconnection and that felt sense of not being able to express myself or be with people because I was intensely laughed at by a big amount of people and needed literally to hide in the closet, like literally to hide. And so that kind of leads me to, not being able to connect with the outside world, and I guess a lot of KI people were kind of the misfits, so to say. So no, not being able to fit out there. One day when I was 14, I found a Bible, actually a children's Bible. It was written, we were not religious because USSR, you can't have any religion. I even find out at 10 years old that I had Jewish blood because we went to Israel all of a sudden, because the border had opened up and people were fleeing everywhere. They were just running away. So yeah, I found this Bible and it was beautiful pictures, just beautiful art, And I was just like started reading a little bit. Actually, what was the first book that I read, like actually cover to cover. And I was like, oh my God, someone just understands me. Someone just speaks, my heart, because I couldn't speak it because I was shut down. I couldn't connect with people. It was really hard. I mean, tennis helped me a lot. So I disappeared in Israel into tennis. Just I've been on the courts, probably living and sleeping on tennis courts. So that kind of helped a lot. But there's comes this book, and I'm just like, wow, someone really speaks my language. And for a year or so, I couldn't find it in Israel, but we moved to Canada right 1 year later when I was 15. And I started to go to church looking for that, what I was looking for, like what my heart was looking for, that yearning. And I couldn't find it there. Although I went for a good 1 year, I kind of enjoyed the atmosphere there, of course. It's just beautiful, and the candles and the smell and everything. But what I was looking for, I couldn't find there. Therefore, the Sweet 16 came and the trouble had come. So I met my first boyfriend, which the father of my first born son. And he was he was just a Russian, very, very beautiful heart, but very troubled with drugs and alcohol and criminal kind of lifestyle. There was emptying Eaton stores. It was like, anyway, it was crazy. It was like I was in a movie. I literally was in a movie. And all of a sudden this had so my nickname in school here in Canada was Angel, because I never sweared. I was just like, this saintly little girl. And then poof, like complete the opposite, flipped completely. So here I'm trying, my first thing I tried, like I drank vodka like crazy, and I basically passed out and woke up in his place. And then from there on, this relationship started, and just the seeking for love and connection, right? Unconsciously, you just do anything for it, just anything. And it was just like, wow, this alcohol helped me to connect. The smoking helped me to connect, cocaine came right away. I was like, before I even was smoking cigarettes, I was doing all these crazy stuff. So this intense lifestyle came into my life, and I basically ran away from home. I disappeared. For me, it was easier. I was so afraid of my mom's anger that it was easier for me to be quiet and not to appear. So imagine my mom, her girl disappears, 16 years old, and it's quiet for a week. So I was intense. So I was processing that pain of her that I caused her in KI, and I was sitting with that. I was just as a mom, I kind of processed all mom's pain around this. So anyway, so this darkness came into my life, and it was half a year of that wildness. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of drugs. And then my partner, the father of my son, was deported. I'm 16, he's 21. He was deported from Canada to Israel. And in Israel, his mom kicked him out of Israel because he was addicted to heroin. And prior to Israel, his mom kicked him out of Kazakhstan because he was addicted to opium. And then in Canada, he was kind of not doing the heavy drugs, but he was afraid to go back. But I was in love, so I just followed him. And just to make the long story short, we both ended up being absolutely overpowered by the heroin addiction. So I was at 16, half year, maybe more, 8 months later, coming back from Israel pregnant, fully addicted to heroin, like intensely, like I thought I'm going to lose my life. So that's coming back to Canada, losing contact with him. And anyway, that's another story. He completely, like, he almost lost his life. It was terrible. When I saw him 2 years later, just to show him our son, here's our son, like, but he was almost non-existent. It was just a skeleton walking, terrible, with like just wounds. Crazy. But anyway, what helped me at that time to really kind of shake it all off? Well, of course, I went through intense withdrawal and just for a good 3 weeks. Couldn't sleep and couldn't do anything. It was just 2 minutes of shower. I think that's the only thing that had helped to kind of like more or less stay present. So my mom helped me in the birth of my son, helped me, and the Bible came back, and I started just drawing. I just started drawing pictures of like healing, and so that helped. Oh, excuse me. So losing my voice somehow. I just found it.
Right? Are you okay with the voice? I have a cold right now, so I can relate. I'm muted and I'm coughing sometimes, so I have a cold.
Oh, there it is, it's back. Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's the dark stage. And you know what, it's just kind of to continue with that, of course. So just kind of to make it shorter, I couldn't find any relief with the spirit, well, with Christianity as much as I tried. It was not there. So I was basically at this point, I'm 17 and I had my firstborn son, and I completely basically lost my life as a young teenager or as a developing woman. So that was quite an energy I come back to, and now it's quite clear, but sometimes I need to come back as the energy of being trapped. So since 16, you know, I had kids. I'm still having my youngest one is still 6. So, and now he's 6, and I felt a little bit more like, oh, I have a little bit more time. So I have a puppy now. I'm 5 months old. It's just like I can't help myself to just like, you know, take care of someone. So anyway, but coming back to Canada in these formative years, so again, just this kind of unlovability was still playing out. And so I got into a relationship and tried different things. Actually, the relationship came to me to also this conditioning from not USSR, but Eastern Europe. There's a conditioning that it's okay for a woman to sell her body somehow. So something came in where it's in Canada, not so much as, you know, prostitution, but, you know, there are places where you can give a massage with whatever extra. That also was an intense conditioning here later on that I had to bring to KI and look at that shame and look at that. But anyway, all that to say, there was like quite a lot of like that other side of like getting heavy and heavy and heavy with different things that I thought would bring happiness. You know, so, but from that work, it brought me to a relationship that was very interesting, that kind of was fulfilling all this material dream and idea of the, you know, having the perfect man and that can take care of you. And I had the house and I drove the supercar and I had all that stuff, and I was completely taken care of. We actually lived in Italy for 2 years, and I was just traveling and training, going to learn Italian in Venice every day. So, but our relationship started from him selling me MDMA, because that's how we connected. It was this bunch of Russians, because we drank and we partied and we did everything, like speed and everything. It was just like, that's the only way we knew how to stay happy and connected, because that allowed me to connect with people, which I love people. I love being surrounded by people, but that now later on discovering that incident and that shame of 30 years, that repressed shame of 30 years didn't allow me to, apart from using all these other medications, alternative drugs that were enabling me to stay, be myself in a way, you know, just be without the filter. So this relationship, apart from giving me a lot of beautiful things, it also got me so exhausted, because our only way to connect and to disconnect was through ecstasy, cocaine, a lot of Rome, and a lot of partying, and many other things. So that brings me long story to the spirituality part, being burned out. So that what brought me. At 27, I woke up and I couldn't recover for a good 3 days. It was just terrible. I couldn't sleep and I couldn't recover. I couldn't, like, it was like I was on the sofa, and I was just like, okay, this has to stop because I can't do this anymore. Because that's the only way I loved life, but it's just, that's the only way I could connect with life and other people and be intimate. So yeah, I gave myself a gift for my 27th birthday, yoga class instead. And I loved it because it's been many years. Like, tennis was repressed after I stopped playing in Israel, and I couldn't continue that in Canada because it was for the elite and it cost a lot of money and not for the immigrants. So I had to shove it under the carpet, and I couldn't take it on since then. So it was for me like just this exercise and the breathing and being on the mat. And I don't know, just somehow I was in the right place in the right time. It just felt right. So my yoga journey, it started when I was 27. And yeah, how to make it short. Okay. Am I, how
yeah,
we doing?
yeah.
Do you want to
Yeah,
ask
I
me
wanna
other
hear-
questions before I dive into the spiritual realm?
Yeah, I do want to hear about what led, some of the stuff that led to an awakening experience. Like, I think you've really recognized your true nature, and so I want to hear about that. And then, of course, how KI came in later, is kind of connecting it up to us in whatever way you want. I know when I tell my story, sometimes I get in the details too, but the details are important. So we have a limited time, but I want to hear.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so starting the yoga journey, well, basically was just really embarking. I'm such 100%. Like, if I give myself to something, it's like really 100%. That's what for me was the most, I guess, the most challenging, is to have three kids. But anyway, so the 100%, I just dived into it, and I had to quit smoking. I had to quit drinking, because not that I had to, I was just driven to. I was just so driven to, because all of a sudden I felt connected, and all of a sudden I started meditating. I started by myself. I just bought books, and I guess that's my the blessing is that I've never had physical teachers. So I always took whatever resonated, very intuitively. I bought some books and I started doing Hatha Yoga, Shivananda's Hatha Yoga. I started meditating twice a day, and I just intuitively fell on this kind of not in understanding. It's kind of was leading itself. The internal kind of energy was focusing me, and the awareness was driven to be focused seamlessly on sound. So that's like basically two weeks into my yoga introduction and practice, and all of a sudden through this kind of intuitive way, apart from focusing on the sound, all of a sudden I kind of felt like dropping into the heart. And I just dropping into the heart, there was this moment of complete beyondness. I was in complete void, but basically I came home, like beyond home. It was just beyond body experience. It was this dark void. Something that a little bit experienced at those moments with my brother, when we did those questions of non-existence, existence. And I just dropped into that, and there was this instantaneous remembrance, and that initiated a Kundalini awakening. It was intense. I was actually reading books, which is interesting. It's like everything comes to you. I was reading the books at the same time of what's his name, Gopi Krishna. And it was like supernatural consciousness, something like that, about his Kundalini awakening. So the fear that kicked in with that, it was so intense. I've never experienced so much fear in my life. It was like my heart was jumping out of my body, and I couldn't stop it, because it was literally felt like there's something was crawling very, very intense, like almost porcupines up my spine. It was just so intense. I was like shaking. It was like all hot flashes and cold. And it was just like the fear was overpowering me. I thought the heart's going to explode. So anyway, I just focus shifted on my altar. That was the natural thing to do. How did I step out of this thing? And I was able to kind of just snap out of this kind of experience. And I ran to my boyfriend at the time, like, oh, you know what happened? You know what happened? And I have like energy all over my body kind of circulating. Anyway, so I'm just kind of with all this fear telling him the story. And all that to say, so I couldn't meditate anymore, and I couldn't find any advice, because it was, as soon as I closed my eyes, it started happening again. But then eventually, about 2 weeks later, I found this Kriya Yoga. So it was the lineage of Yogananda and the Babaji in the Himalayas. And so there was this ashram of Kriya Yoga, and the teacher was there. It was not pretending to be the guru, but it's like, like you connect with the energy of Babaji and the Himalayan tradition. And basically, I'm here to give you all these tools, like different ways of mastering the mind. He didn't even call it meditation, but it was different tools to master in the mind. And then I told him the experience, and he said, well, it's you, it's your energy. Like, so what are you afraid of? I'm like, what are you talking to me? So anyway, I started to learn from not just different tools, but the attitude of being with fear and removing the resistance, and just really being gentle with that experience, and really landing with curiosity, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I don't want to experience this. Oh my gosh, I'm so scary. I'm going to be annihilated. I'm going to be devoured. So this started to develop this gentleness of being in the body, because most of my meditations following that, it was just observing this energy that was doing its thing, going up. It was just spending time in different locations. So it was still kind of stuck in my lower back. So the whole journey of yoga and different initiation. And so I was initiated later on in the Himalayan yoga tradition and of Swami Rama, the Himalayas. And I was traveling to Minneapolis every year in the summer for silent retreats. And I was traveling to India. I've been in India 4 times in those 4 years, spending all my winters there. And the evolution of this process was quite interesting, because it was just so naturally happening. Like, there was no external pressure. There was no, nobody telling me what to do or how to do it. I would take from every tradition what was resonating, what was helping. And that was like a natural evolution of the yoga practice, and just the body becoming more and more ready to accommodate that energy was kind of like an obvious course that eventually in 3 years kind of led me, no, probably in 2 years, the books of Advaita Vedanta, or like more like the teachers of Nisargadatta and Ramana Maharishi, started to come my way. And if before Jnana Yoga, which is, one of the Advaita paths, didn't make sense, I'm like, how do you like mind all this? Like, how do you need to understand it? Or how, like, I couldn't understand it. But eventually, like the body was ready, because in meditations, that concentration on sound, whether it was just inner sound or mantra, eventually that seamlessness with it for 5 minutes just gets you poof, to the other side. It just gets you into the state of spaciousness, gets you into the state of being. And that more and more kind of in a cumulative way brought, that's kind of my invitation to people, don't dismiss that. It brings, that readiness to understand, not from intellectualizing non-duality, but to actually from direct experience. So that was that kind of maturing, and me eager to go and spend some time in Ramana Maharishi's ashram. So that was kind of almost 3 years. Oh, you disappeared. You're back. Okay, so yeah, that was 3 years into the energy moving up my spine. But when it was moving, so the most intense part was in my heart, and I'm still uncovering stuff, repressed stuff around my heart area with KI. And there was so much pain when the energy was moving through the heart and up. It was very intense, actually. Well, I was kind of like sometimes for a month with pain, but I still learned to trust the experience, and trust that energy, almost to a point, right, that this connection from the mother that I was speaking about in the beginning, like I was seeing that as the female energy, the Kundalini for me was Kali, that was destroying everything that it was in the way of wholeness. So of course, my life also looked a little bit chaotic. I left my 9-year-old relationship because that was not, resonating. He was like, okay, what are all these men on your altar you're worshiping? And it's okay. Now I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that probably looked ridiculous. But anyway, um, so our relationship fell apart and me going to India, and altogether in those 3 years, I didn't even feel like having sex because it felt, I don't know, it felt just so sacred what I was going through. And maybe the books also like did a lot of mumbo jumbo that I didn't feel like doing anything. But eventually I arrived to India, and of course I had the blast of my life sexually. So that was kind of healed itself and found its outlet. But the first 3 years, it was very kind of sacred experience with that. So anyway, coming to non-duality and kind of arriving to a Ramana ashram, so which is kind of finishing a little bit my spirituality story. So yeah, so I was sitting there still with a mantra in the meditation hall and repeating the mantra. And all of a sudden there's this thought that crossed, because it's kind of silent and you're so seamless with the mantra. It said like, if you came to experience who you are, why are you covering it with sound? So I let the mantra go. And I was just sitting there. And I knew I've I glimpsed like little satori's here and there of being, but how to stay with being. So I was asking, I am. So I'm just looking at Ramana's big painting there laying on the sofa. I'm like, how do I stay with I am? I like just that question. And just by grace, literally by grace, there was this whole space, everything that is this isness just came forward in this intense silence, intense overpowering silence. It was just so magnificent and so there and so always there. You just realize like, oh my God, how do you even miss that? So for me, it was this consciousness of no Arunachala and this Shiva, like this consciousness was just so thickly there. It was almost like you can almost touch it, how dense it is. So anyway, I was just in this silent watching movie. It's just silent, people coming, going, but it's not even people. It's just this. So I spent there a whole day kind of got up, went to another room where the boys singing the Vedas, and was just sitting in that hole basically all day, which followed. Interesting. It was kind of there for in smaller doses for a week, and then all of a sudden, whoop, everything closed back. And Alina was back, and the ego was back, and everything was back. So it was interesting, but the seeking stopped. And that was, I guess, a big relief. A spiritual seeking, but there was still seeking. It was interesting. Spiritual seeking had stopped for a good year, but now it was like, okay, so what's my purpose? And what's, how am I going to deliver this? Or what's the place where I'm going to live? Where's that community, that perfect paradise on earth where I'm going to grow my children? So it was that still was happening. So anyway, it was kind of interesting. A year later, basically, I was just living life and just allowing things to happen. There was this craving to go back because meditation felt like I didn't practice yoga anymore, and meditation was not needed. And it's like why would you? Anyway, so everything fell away, but there was this craving to meditate or to fall into this beingness more, like instead of the concentration I was using, like doing like this. So Adyashanti came, and also like a lot of Adyashanti talks helped so much. And Eckhart Tolle in that 1 year already kind of knowing, but at the same time not abiding yet. There was this knowing already, but not abiding. So anyway, this craving came, and I did everything to end up in India, but at the end I ended up in Mexico, and it was 2011. And it's just being so busy with responsibilities didn't allow me the chance to kind of go back to the spiritual realm, because at that time my older son was 13, 14, teenager. So So it's anyway, dealing with teenage energy. So all that to say, so I came to, for 3 days, my son went to live with his dad, which was found, and he was fine and he was okay. He was in Israel, he had a family, and he was completely healed and recovered. And it was really beautiful to find him. So my son was going to live in Israel with his dad. And I had 3 days to myself. And I basically found Adyashanti's meditation, which allowing everything to be as it is, and something without manipulation, something like that. And anyway, I just ran them. I just ran it, and I just sat for 3 days. My partner at the time also found work. It was catering. He's working as a chef, so he was full time at work, and I was just basically meditating for. Which was interesting point. It was the passing away of Ramana Maharishi. It was like 14th or 16th of April, anyway, 2011. So it's just like, okay, I was just craving, and Arunachal somehow came, within my heart. I'm like, oh, I don't need to travel to India. I just can bring it right here. It's not needed. So anyway, this kind of absorption and meditation, and different, more like this kind of meditation, brought eventually this realization. Mexico is very loud. So it was just this intense sounds of trucks passing by and kids and dogs barking. And all of a sudden, what brought me to that kind of like intense desire to meditate and to kind of transcend and go beyond, it was actually the suffering. I was trying again, this search was trying to get to Costa Rica, to this beautiful community to live, but my partner couldn't because he couldn't have a visa and something else with, excuse me. So he couldn't get a visa, and there was this intense split in myself. Like all of a sudden here I love him, and all of a sudden like here I hate him and I want to run away. I'm like, oh my God, like I can't deal with this. And the more, how the more awareness here, the more it's just so heavy, and you so see it, and it's just so in your face. So it was just these lies. And literally before the whole shift had happened, I was standing in front of a mirror, literally crying, and just feeling the suffering and the lies and the intensity people live with. Oh, excuse me, I just have I have open WhatsApp. It's just ringing. So yeah, this intense, it was just so intense. And I was just, oh my gosh, I can't bear these lies anymore. Like I want truth and nothing but truth. And literally I went into a mirror, like looked into my eyes, and was just begging for truth and nothing but truth. And that's where like just kind of this sitting in absorption and meditation and hearing the outside. And it was just all of a sudden like, wow, these dogs, there's no difference between what's here. And it's just like puff, the split, there's like a crack, and you just like felt that crack, like and boom. It was just like intense presence here. So anyway, it's just intensity, this intensity, which was interesting. It kind of created a little bit of a shame around awakening. With that intensity, my partner came back, and it was like, I don't know, he was complaining that I was not there for 3 days with him, some sort of like relationship, whatever issue. But Alina was gone. Like Alina was literally gone. And it was this intensity that was like, whoa, like kind of just pure presence. And I couldn't like, it was just, and he got so scared. The ego got so scared that I guess Alina was slightly there to kind of take it on. And then later on, it was like for a good 10 years hiding this shame around awakening, not able to share none of this, because I don't want to be, like more than him or scare him in some way, because the unlovable is still there when it came back. So anyway, there was the good 2 months of spiritual honeymoon where Alina was gone, and there was just kind of samadhi, and people, whoever was coming was kind of get swallowed by that. It was just beautiful. But then coming back to Montreal, it was just like, oh, okay, how do I stay with this? How do I not lose this? How do I not unwind myself? And I was just seeing the mechanics and seeing the root thought, let's say, I know, and kind of believing that I know like right away, would create what felt then like separation, but eventually it just feels, nah, that's not separation, it's just sensations. you know. But eventually, it's just kind of this learning how to stay with that. And of course, what followed, okay, how to make it short. So what followed, it was 2 years of being stuck in awareness, because I had really, it was scary. It was scary to lose that. So if it means, like, if you're relating and in your speech, you all of a sudden can get lost and maybe like defend what you're saying, with I know, or like a slight inclination into that, then it would feel like separation right away again. So anyway, it was kind of like the scary business relating. So I was hanging out in awareness, which is nice, beyond everything. It's like nothing touches you, and everything from here, like everything is awake and perfect. Anyway, so okay, so that brings me to giving birth and just kind of leaning forward into relationship, saying yes to life, big yes to life. In the process, being pregnant, I can mention that I uncovered there was this intense trauma coming up, where I couldn't speak. I was presenting a presentation, a permaculture workshop, anyway, that we did, and I needed to present something in front of people, and all of a sudden there was this intense inability to speak. So I ran into the forest and started begging life. I didn't know inquiry back then at all, but I always communicated with life in a sense, because it came to me, kind of took me by the hand in the sense of this mother energy. So I always communicated with that. So I just kind of begged life, like, what is this? I literally started screaming in the forest, like, what is this? And all the pictures of 30 years of this repressed shade, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen that all these years. So anyway, I didn't know how to deal with that. And that came as a form of even more so maybe identifying with that, because it was so shocking to find it. And it was like, oh my God, this poor girl, what happened to her? Also became a label. I'm working on this, like a big label. I'm working on this because this is what happened. So I started to kind of tell the story with friends, and like, well, this is what I'm going to do. I want to work with this, and that's what I'm going to do. But I'm still not there, because I'm still working, healing this. So this was a good, I guess, 2-3 years of just kind of being stuck in this victim label of repressed shame. And because I didn't know how to go there and really feel that, and really allow it to be felt, and really just kind of go beyond. So seeing the resistance that was so settled, like when things become more and more and more and more subtle. And so there was this resistance there for it to come every time, I wanted to do a video, I wanted to record myself, I wanted to start sharing, because I've been hiding for 10 years. And here I'm seeing you doing all these videos and all the other teachers about that time, having their shift and sharing. I'm like, oh my God, how they're doing this. So anyway, coming back to noticing resistance. So there was a part like, oh, I thought I was with it from awareness. Here I am, witnessing everything in the story, and what happened in the pictures. But here I am resting with it, but it's not shifting. Here I'm resting with it, and it's not shifting. So anyway, at the end, like finding that resistance, very, very subtle resistance, that every time with it would come, it would go like my body would go, shit, here it is again, if I would put it in words. So then, then it's just kind of, well, I did it abruptly. Now coming back from repression inquiry to it again, and really feeling the shame really, really helped. The way I appear again, it removed another layer, like even that PTSD energy was not choking me anymore, because that was the blockage after awakening. And with this lack of expression, I had intense lump in my throat. And that was something that KI had helped me a lot, a lot, a lot with. And just coming 2 years ago to the training and whatever, presenting whatever issue, the actual forefront was, and it's still the recording is there for the trainees to watch, and Dan facilitating me, and it was like intense redness, and I couldn't speak, and I was just like really this intense fear of whatever being nothing. I think it was something like nothing, the shame of like being smeared into nothing. Yeah. So anyway, learning skillful ways to be with that years later, right? Years later, because I first I was kind of very harsh with myself in a sense, and now I wouldn't recommend it to people. I would recommend a combination, because I literally kicked my ass into action. I said, okay, like, I asked life, okay, enough hiding, like, send me a sign. And there's a friend of mine who's offering a meditation class and said, like, well, can you replace me? I have like 20 students, and I know you love meditating, maybe you can guide. I'm like, yes, this is a sign. But here I go, and I hate going there. I was like, I thought I'm gonna die literally on my way. I was biking. I thought to turn back 100 times. And so I'm dealing with this energy within me. And I was so lucky I had the breathing technique, because I came there and I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't even speak. So I just was teaching everyone this breathing technique that stayed with me from my yoga days. And that calmed my nervous system to a degree where I was able to lead meditation. And it was just so fulfilling. I'm like, oh, yes, this is it. This is what I'm here for. So, but at the same time, like forcing myself can constantly created this PTSD reaction of like, okay, I need to regulate my nervous system and then I'm okay. But right now, being more skillful with the repression inquiries and really landing there and really going through and really feeling, allowing that shame to be felt and expressed, and it has another degree of gentleness and another degree of integration, like really, really allowing um, to really dive instead of, push through, like breakthrough. Um, so yeah, anyway, I'll leave you at that. So lead me to KI, the last bit of it. And sorry for my long story. It's just so juicy. Gotta write a book.
Very juicy. Yes.
Um, so yeah, KI. So KI started training with you and Dan 2 years ago, and that was a blessing in disguise, because I couldn't afford it. So for me, it was like a big chunk of money. So I like had to get the payments rolling and everything. But at the same time, I just knew I had to do it. It was just right, and it was in the beginning of the pandemic, and I just knew people. I started offering again meditation kind of online, and people started reach out to me again with the same questions. How did you came out of your, shame, and started sharing? So I'm like, I need tools with that. And so coming, it seemed like I had my work done, but there was so much still there. So with KI, oh my gosh, I uncovered intergenerational trauma and like this struggle to survive from my grandma going through the war, the Second World War, and running away as a Jew, and my mom running away from USSR. And so this me running, constantly running. So I uncovered that and kind of healed that. So now I'm like, I'm not moving. I'm like, I'm here, I'm good wherever I am. Because there's this constant moving. This is not the place, the next one. This is not the place, the next one. So anyway, so this helped me with that. It helped me to definitely my first session with you, I uncovered that I actually had shame around awakening. And I was like, crying, oh, I didn't know it was here. So that helped to release that. And I guess what I want to say, the beauty is, and that's my emphasis on the foundation, whether you do KI. So kind of start noticing, where are you watching from, and that background. Because when we do KI with the foundation of being, or like the foundation of you know, uh, not being lost in the identity again and again, then it's just like we don't need to look too much. It's just like not too much, right? I mean, with some things, perhaps, like some, I could see if I didn't resolve the repressed shame prior to coming to KI, that would probably took some time, because it took me, even being, from awareness, living from awareness, it's just took a good 5 years still. And still there was stuff to resolve and feel through KI.
Mhm.
So I would say, I guess some intense stuff, yeah, but some other things, it's just like, wow, it's just like you see it once and it's just gone. Like with Dan, and we uncovered this, what was it, the lack. So I need to believe I'm lacking for love and approval. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna go too far with this program in me into, making my own living. And that was a big part of my life, constantly hiding behind men or government support or whatever support, but never on my own. Like, I mean, I always did what I love. I did graphic design and photography and web design. So, but it was always like a little bit, I'll do a little part-time, but the rest, support me because I can stay small and unlovable. Yeah, so it's interesting to see the utility, how the staying small to be taken care of was actually preventing me to really step into my power, which was very cool. Like how you wrote, the test for repression, that question, like about power, and what was it? Mm,
Superpower. I can feel and
I can
express my power, strength. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That would have been perfect like about 2 years ago. I would be like, oh. Now with, with KI and already uncovering many other things, of course. And that again, it brings me back again to that shame. I believe the way I saw it in my system, and I see it in other people, that shame covers the expression. And it's that repressed shame, whatever, in whatever way, if it's not dealt, that question, like I can fully express my power, is
Yeah.
not going to be, a yes.
And I also found
Um,
with anger repression for me is the
okay,
expression
wow.
down too. Yeah. But yeah, both for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm so curious, because I'm onto anger repression right now. I'm
Yeah.
super curious
Yeah.
to find how fully can I still express myself, maybe even more so.
Mhm.
Or how can I, help my clients even better understanding by experiencing it within myself. So yeah, I this other day, well, the video is up in the members area, but I uncovered so much hatred of anger. So it's like my command was avoid anger, like by all means, just avoid it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it's kind of really cool to come back and just really be with that, and just really and it's kind of interesting because it originated from my mom being angry with us and violent with us. So I don't want to give it to my kids. So my entry was, instead of I can feel and express my anger to my mom, which was kind of the originator of that, I can feel and express anger with my children. And that was like, whoa,
Yeah.
no, you
Mhm.
can't. And so,
Can I
yeah,
just
so it was,
can I say
yeah,
this about that is like we deal with a lot of kids or adults who come in, they had parents that were angry at them and they're traumatized by it. So it's not like you're completely off base when you say you don't want to get angry and hateful towards your kids. Like there's some wisdom in it. And we have to kind of balance that because it's not like this work is about just going and being angry all the time at your kids. Like that's not the landing place.
no,
That's not where
no,
we're going with this. But to have that accessible, I guess. So I just want people to think that, oh, the point of this is that now you can get angry at your kids. It's really not really the point of it. I mean, to be able
yeah.
to get your voice online, but not to traumatize your kids.
No, 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 not at all. That
Right.
wouldn't be why I want to release the anger.
Yeah.
Definitely not. But it is a good entry point for me, because that's where the repression comes from. So and that's the beauty of, like, just even previously when you were explaining a few of the new tools, and my question was like, well, what if I release the anger and I'll be angry with the kids? But now doing the work, it's actually, wow, it's just a bit as just the freedom for anger to exist. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's going to be unloaded on my kids.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely seen right away by actually working in that. Yeah, so there's so many things Ki helped me. I mean, with just
Yeah.
expression, it was just still clearing up layers of shame, layers of not being understood. It was definitely what was the shame. So I needed, that's another thing that was blocking me from sharing. I need to be perfect to be lovable. So for my mom, we needed to be perfect and intelligent enough, and we're not intelligent enough, not educated enough, and like all this, not enough, not enough. So for me, before I even did a video, before I even did anything, to take all these courses and trainings and coaches and what have you, to just be perfect before I show up. And then, oh my gosh, it's just to see that, and remove that out of the picture. You just show up
Yeah.
and things get better, eventually, like you learn how to express yourself a little bit better, and, get a little bit better with the technology, and things kind of rolling. So that was it. And again, it's like all these sentences that are in our operating system. So it's just kind of, and it's not a need. That's another message for me when I work with this and work with Ki, and where I came from this to this. It's like, it's not overriding with a new program,
Right.
because a lot of new age right there, well, let's reprogram you. But it's not reprogramming. The beauty is when we just erase stuff to neutrality, erase both sides, that I'm good enough and I'm not good enough, and just really expose the anger, even though if it starts with the RI, I can express anger to my children, like not being afraid to trust the process, to really unlock everything, neutralize everything, allow all emotions to be awakened within us. Then the beauty is we don't need to override with new things, like life kind of takes
Yeah.
over and gives you the next step and the next step and the next jam, and the next person to work with and the next interview and the next, whatever it is. It's just kind of abundant in that way. And the abundance kind of comes in this variety of forms, like, what my repressed tennis, I play tennis now with the most amazing coach that used to be a professional tennis player. And guitar, I didn't play guitar. Like my father was a guitar player and musician. And having kids, I constantly repress that. Oh, not this lifetime. I guess not this lifetime. I love it. I'm going to be the listener. And now I've been playing classical guitar for 6 months. I love it. I have this most amazing, inspiring teacher. Yeah, it's just like you follow your joy and it's fun. It's playful.
That's beautiful. Well, I wrote down a couple notes before we
Yeah,
get off
yeah.
here, because I just listening to your story, you just hit so many different buttons, and I don't know where you want to go with this, but for example, I mean, you've talked about shame, you talked about addiction, trauma, repression, expression, so many different things that you have experience with. You've talked about being stuck in awareness. And so I guess my question is, well, here, let me start here. One thing that you and I really, really agree with is that when people come to do this deeper embodiment work, to have that foundation and beingness and to resource there. And I think that's an important message. Can you say from your experience why you think that's important? Because I agree.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just because when we give enough time to that chunk of whatever it is, meditating, being a bit more mindful when we wash dishes, whatever is it in the shower, being a bit seamless with the water, whatever your thing is, like find it. Because what happens when we look at things through Ki, we no longer need to come back and look and look and look and look. Sometimes where we're looking from is more than enough for awareness to actually go recognize, that it was stuck in some illusion. And when awareness recognizes this, as opposed to me, the individual body with a story that looks at things, oh, I'm going to do my healing. No, it's not my healing. It's actually, the space. How do we recognize ourselves more and more and come back to notice that there is just existence and sensations and things within it? So it's just the more we recognize that there is the existence, there's this background, there's this spaciousness, the more I think it's going to be, uh, how would I say, not fast, but much more effective. We don't need to do all these different kind of healings. Like KI is so sharp and so perfect to go so deep and so precise into the unconscious immediately,
Yeah.
immediately. So if we have the right space where we're looking from,
Yeah.
that's like really changes the whole,
And it helps us use it more wisely, the sharp knife, because
Yeah.
we know ourselves more in a sense. Like we're not coming at it from necessarily the old way. It's like I got to get rid of it. I got to seek. We're coming from that stable ground, and then that knife can work well in that stable ground.
Yeah.
But
Not
it doesn't
afraid of
always-
healing.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter how intense, you
Right.
still can lean forward. It's still like, oh, you know that you're not destroyed. You know that you're not really wounded. But you can lean into the woundedness. You can be the woundedness for a while, right?
Yeah.
Because you know essentially nothing gets
that you're
harmed.
not that exactly, so that's really important. So what would you say to people? Because I've been saying it recently when people come in, and I'm encouraging other facilitators to say it, that you, for example, I wouldn't jump into KI if you don't have some sort of foundation in that, or practice in mindfulness or presence and regulating your nervous system and all that stuff. What would you say to people who come in, but they're very, very excited to get to the deeper trauma work or the deeper woundedness, but they don't have that foundation? What would you, I think you said it already, but how would you kind of coach them to do it in a more mature way? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I come back to, yoga became this monster right now, but in its essence, it's so accessible and so available to people. And just adapting 5 different postures that can actually, because yoga is so beautiful in a sense, the breathing is there, the presence is there, being just with the sensations, getting familiar with being in the body is such a direct access. Getting familiar being with sensations, because not doing stretching for a while, that's going to be very sense kind of enhanced experience, because and just landing. So I feel like, well, maybe it's yoga, but I don't know. Just for me, I feel it got so oversaturated and over commercialized that it lost the beauty of its benefits. It kind of got washed there, but it has all the elements of nervous system regulation, of being present, of awareness of body development, the stretching and the moving and the energy. It balances the polarities. After actual yoga practice, well, I'm going to dive into breathing. I want to do like a little mini, like whatever live call on the breath and how important it is, because we're actually constantly every hour and a half, our polarities switch from left to right, and our nostril, one is open and then the other one is open every hour and a half or so. So sometimes we're more contemplative, sometimes we're more energetic, depends on the digestion and everything. After a yoga practice, and the mind becomes so in a state of samadhi or in a state of spaciousness, is the 2 channels are open. So the main channel is open. So after a yoga practice, it's so beneficial that it even opens both of the channels. So it allows you to sit and inquire from the right space, or it allows you to sit and meditate in a non-agitated mind, actually be able to watch your mind in a more peaceful state. So it does a lot of things. So I would greatly, greatly recommend some, not intense, so you don't have to go Ashtanga yoga and do like crazy pretzels, right? You could just like do a hatha yoga routine on YouTube. And I'm thinking I'm going to do actually, and I'm going to film myself with this simple yoga routine that I'm going to put it in the basics, and some breathing technique to go along with that I want to support people to, for them to be able to start to get acquainted more and more with themselves as the space, the beingness itself, the existence itself. And so that's I think it's an important part. Maybe they have already a practice in place, but just kind of give it more a different kind of angle, attention, like how can I be more present when I do this? because we can be doing things very mindlessly, like kind of just out of routine or habit or just semi-automatic.
Well,
So
inquiry can be done that way too, like
uh-huh,
that kind of mechanical way. So that makes sense too, to settle down into being so that you don't do the inquiry from that mechanical. That makes a
yeah,
lot of sense. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, in whatever way, just bring that mindfulness in. Phone it in,
Yes.
whether it's exercise or anything.
So I've got two more questions before we go. I have to
Mhm.
go in about 10 minutes, but I think there's important questions for me at least. Because you mentioned being stuck in awareness. And I think that that's a state that people get in. It's a natural thing that happens. I don't think that it
Mhm.
has to be judged. It's just, it happens.
No.
And for some of the people that I've worked with, it feels like some of it was a lack of embodiment, still innocent because they didn't have the tools or they weren't able to
Yeah.
embody whatever. And so you kind of have to stay stuck in that place where you're just not ready to integrate whatever else. Um,
Yeah.
so how did it work for you? Like, what could you say to people who might not be stuck in awareness yet, or might be, or they've heard about it? And then how does one, because when you're stuck there, it can be tricky to kind of move
Mhm.
out of it, right? For various reasons. So can you say something about any of that?
I think the most important is trusting the process. And as you're saying exactly that, now I'm using the word stuck because looking back, but then it was just a natural unfolding and the natural process of have no clue how to move in the world from
Yeah.
this new space,
Mm.
because you see all the structures previous working. How can I get, what can I get out of this, what can I get out of this relationship, out of this conversation? So the ego structure kind of dying, so you don't even know how to move, so you're kind of like there a little bit, you know. So that's kind of a natural process, I feel, until you, like with everything, like with suffering, has to come to a point where it's so oversaturated and like you're enough is enough, you know. The same thing with this, it kind of gets so dry, so dry that it's like, oh, enough is enough, you know.
Mhm.
And then okay, yes to life. And I was literally at the same time, it's kind of tricky because the mind can take on concepts. So I was listening to Adyashanti. I'm like, okay, when is this awakening of the heart is happening? Why it's not happening? So I was kind of begging life, like to, okay, I want to know how love moves in the world. I know how truth moves in the world. I want to know how love.
Yeah.
So, so whatever the tricks are, you know, but again, KI, whoever is in KI, I think it's very simple to actually get into the embodied state because it's so dealing with the intimacy part and really uncovering the heart and the whole part of being afraid to relate because there was still so many layers on the layer of the heart. And I guess Adyashanti has it right, but when the mind makes it into a concept and
Mhm.
just thinks about how to get there without actually, you know,
Yes.
actually relating, like
Yeah.
hello.
That's brilliant. I had the same experience. It had nothing to do with audio because he was one of my teachers
Yeah,
too. I still love him. But he said something
great.
like, until you experience that unity consciousness, you're not really there. And I thought, then I started thinking about it. And then that's the issue. And I had to move into it and experience, and the thought got a hold of
Yeah.
me. And so I can relate to that. Let me ask you
So
another thing.
relationships, that's would be the cure.
Yes,
Dive into relating, whatever
that's
that
it.
might mean for
Yeah,
you.
because it'll show up there, won't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, That's really good to hear that. I never heard anybody explain it that way. And I think that's helpful because I kind of explained it. It's like, well, it's not embodied yet. But what you said, it makes a lot of sense. And I felt that too. Whereas like there's a new normal here
Yeah.
and it doesn't fit with that out there in a way. And so you
Yeah.
have to kind of like
Empty
find that.
conversation don't make sense, you know. It's
Yeah.
just like
Yep.
I'd rather hang around here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, so my last question is, people coming to the members area or even to you out in the public as a facilitator, teacher, what can they expect? Like what kinds of things do you offer? Sessions, groups, what's the content of the groups? What can they expect around this?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so in the members area, I offer every Tuesday. There is a guided natural rest, and it's basically direct pointing for a good 15 minutes or so while meditating, while kind of just resting. And then eventually we just sit quietly for 5 minutes, just observing, just being. And since it's in members area, there's usually some KI related questions or non-duality questions. So there's a little bit of time to share and to interact. So that's every Tuesday at 12. Oh, so hold on, at 10 Pacific, 10 a.m. Pacific. And to best of my ability, sometimes I have kids, so sometimes it's not happening. But it's announced. And then on Thursday, every other Thursday, I have a dyad inquiry. So that's it's an inquiry. It's a very simple practice of inquiry, but it's very beautiful. It brings two strangers to very big, how to say, instantaneous depth of intimacy through prompt questions that people choose to sit with, and I separate them into rooms, and people basically inquire in pairs, and you have 4 turns of being the witness for 5 minutes, and then inquiring for 5 minutes and changing turns. So that's been wonderful, and people really love it. I do love it, and it's just kind of introduces you more without the intensity of going and digging into body, into our memories, but it actually teaches you how to go down and be with what's arising in the body.
Yeah.
So it's very nice, basic, and as well, kind of an invitation to authentically relate instead of, this.
Yeah. I told you just before we go here, but I think I just want to emphasize how important that is, because when I'm working with people and the digging tools that we do, it's like
Mhm.
if we can't hold that with love, what comes up, that resistance creates issues for us. Now we're all going to experience resistance, but what you're doing is you're setting the foundation for people. So I did this for years of just natural rest, pointing to the sense of just letting things be, being intimate with things, and that foundation is already there for me in my experience. But it isn't for everybody. So I want people to know that when we start digging into this unconscious stuff, like how you're relating to what arises is everything. And so setting the foundation is learning how, so to speak, through discovery, how to relate. And that's why I just want to, again, make the point that I hope everybody heard that when you're coming to KI, because it is a sharp knife, that what Alina's saying is true about this, that we do need that foundation. So I just want to again say it and thank you for bringing that to KI, that wisdom, that truth about this. So I'm really excited that this hits on a lot of points. I want to put it up on YouTube. It hits on some points that I don't think we've hit on before, like you having gone through the awakening experience and gone through some of the so-called traps, but they're not really. It's just the process, it's just what
Yeah.
happens. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I hope to
Yeah.
see, is there anything else
So
you
yeah,
can say
and
before we go? Yeah.
for others, I offer one-on-one, and you can find me on the facilitators directory. So there's packages and one-on-one sessions. And from my own kind of, maybe I'll ask Alec to add it as well to the directory. What I offer as well as like an intensive immersion. So it's like a package of 16 sessions that is compartmentalized into KI processing. So, and some sessions that's going to deal with direct pointing, and some's going to be actually with finding. So it's really for like beginners. So it can be working together with the yoga practices and the stuff that I was sharing before, and finding them a routine that they can establish more in being, and at the same time, have this more the elements. So basically the elements of direct pointing, KI, and nervous system regulation. So it's the kind of like a package. So I'm
That's
going to
good.
speak with Alec to get it up as well in my offering through the directory.
That's awesome. I love that. And let me say this, in case you don't know how to find Alina exactly. Well, the members area is where she's sharing. She's talking about that. And the members area is you can go to my Facebook page, go to the top to the pinned post, and there's a link to the members area. It's a cost of $30 a month, 2 weeks free at first. And then at Kiloby.com, just so that you know, if you want, because I like that package session. I think some people would be drawn to that. So if you go to Kiloby.com and you go to find the facilitator at the top, scroll down, you'll see the facilitator tab. Just click on that and you'll see Alina there, and you can click on her. So just to let them know how to find you. Thank you for being here and sharing all this.
Thank you so much to listening. Take care.